Hey everyone, thank you all for joining us today. My name is Carolyn Ring and I'm a marketing manager here at Fulcrum. But today we have special guest Meaghan Ziemba joining us and joining our founder Sunny Han to discuss the manufacturing workforce and some tips for how small manufacturers can compete to win and find the best talent. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll be monitoring that throughout and we'll have a Q&A portion at the end where we can answer all those questions as well. But we're super excited to have Meaghan here today. I had the pleasure of meeting her at IMTS and you might know her from the Meaghan Ziemba Manufacturing podcast. I'm going to pass it over to her to introduce herself a little further and then pass it over to Sunny to start the discussion. So, Meaghan, if you want to plug yourself a little bit
Sure.
here.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm Meaghan Ziemba. I'm the host of Mavens of Manufacturing, but I also own a writing company called Z Inc. Solutions, where I help industrial manufacturers find their brand voice and create a bunch of content for them. So I know there's a lot of stuff going around with that new GPT technology, which is kind of interesting and I know scaring some writers out there, but I'm interested to see how that unfolds. But with Maven's Manufacturing, my main inspiration for starting that is during the pandemic, there was a lot of conversations happening on LinkedIn, and I wasn't seeing a lot of the women that I knew during my trade publication days participating in those conversations. So I really wanted to create a platform where they could come on, share their stories, as well as their skill sets, because I think that's vitally important when we're trying to inspire the next generation workforce to come join our sector. Because right now, there's still a lot of misconceptions surrounding engineering and manufacturing. And I think there's a lot of lack of education involved where we're not doing a very good job explaining what types of opportunities are available and what those opportunities look like and entail. So with Mavens, I hope to close some of those gaps with the stories that I'm sharing with the women that are coming on.
Awesome. So in researching you and asking around about you, I don't think there's anyone that I know that has talked to as many manufacturers as you have. What do you see? Like what's changed over time?
There's quite a few things that have changed. I think the pandemic kind of helped with the changes that are happening. So, because we couldn't move for a while and we had to stay isolated for a bit, I know we had the essential workers where there's just some jobs that you can't stop. You can't completely stop manufacturing, otherwise, there's going to be a huge problem, not just within the United States, but globally. Like, manufacturing is the lifeline of how we get through our lives and how we get through our days. So with some of the changes, there was remote work. And I think before manufacturers were hesitant to allow people to either work from home or have a hybrid structure because they thought then people would kind of decrease their productivity. With the pandemic, they were able to see that that's not necessarily the case. So there's a lot of conversations around providing flex schedules and also hybrid schedules, or just allowing certain people, for instance, with myself, I'm a writer, so I was mostly involved in the marketing departments. If as long as I have a computer with a good connection, I can work from anywhere. So I
Mhm.
don't like being in an office all day long because people like to have conversations and catch up. And I was having conversations more than actually getting some of the writing done. So I like that hybrid schedule where I can come into the office, take pictures, walk around the shop, talk to people, interview them, get stories. But then I also like to have my own writing space where I'm more comfortable in and not around my kids, not around anyone else, and be able to punch out content for 2 to 3 hours at a time. The other thing that a lot of manufacturers are considering is flex scheduling, where so with a lot of parents, if you have children, you have drop off and pick up times for school. So allowing parents to come in either earlier or later in the day so that they can leave at a certain time to kind of accommodate those drop off and pickup times. I'm seeing a lot of conversations around those situations. So those are just some of the changes. I also had a conversation with a woman who was actually going to build a daycare space within her facility that she owned because she had a lot of single moms working on the shop floor. So this way, the moms could bring in their kids, drop them off. They also organized a drop off pickup, like a bus of some sort, to so the kids that were in school, they could come pick up the kids, bring them to the school, and the moms wouldn't have to worry about going to multiple points throughout their day to get their kids home to and from school. So those are some of the things that I've seen. Really cool.
In the software world and in a tech world, there's this problem where the new generation of workers, they really want to spend time with people that are more veteran, that have had more experience, to learn from them. They want to get better at their
Mhm.
jobs. They want to do really well. But a lot of the folks that have been here for a while, that are really successful and more veteran, they want to stay at home. They can do their jobs remotely. Um, do you see that happening in manufacturing as well, where that knowledge shift is happening too slowly, or there's something that's preventing the new generation from learning quickly from the older generation? And if so, like what does that look like, and how do people solve that well?
I definitely think there is a gap between the older generations and the younger generations. So the older generations tend to have more of that hands-on skill set and knowledge. And because most of them that I've talked to have started from the shop floor and worked their way up, they know every aspect of the business. Where the next generation, they're considered the digital natives for a reason. They were born into a life where all they know is technology, and they can pick up the advanced technologies a lot quicker than some of the older generations. So personally speaking, I have a 19-year-old daughter, and any new technology that comes out, it takes her a few seconds, maybe a few minutes to figure it out. Whereas me, it takes me longer than that because I'm just not used to it. I still have a paper calendar that I write notes in instead of using my computer all the time. So I'm going back from like the computer to paperwork, and I see that a lot with the younger generations and the older generations. So there's a lot of companies who are considering some sort of like mentorship programs where they're not just using the older generation to mentor the younger generation, but bringing in they're calling it like reverse mentorship, I think is the term that I heard, where the younger generation are actually teaching the older generation too. So they're pairing them up so that they're learning from one another and helping each other out, and they're building relationships that way. There's a company in It's not a company, it's actually a technology hub. It's called eCami in Eastern Kentucky. Kathy Walker is the one that started it, and she's doing something very similar to there. So she started that out when she realized that coal mining was starting to decrease in that area, and she wanted to find a way to upskill the coal miners so that when coal mining wasn't useful anymore, they had an opportunity to use their skill sets in some of the newer careers that were opening up, especially within CNC machining. And now she's also incorporating training programs for robotics and additive manufacturing. So she's taking some of these younger generations that are going through tech school as well as high school and pairing them up to some of these older generations so that they're learning and teaching one another on how to do these skills. And I think that we need to continue doing that because as well as many people want to say that those basic skills might not be as important, I feel like they're still important to know because when you're troubleshooting some of these advanced technologies, you need to know the basics. And that's one of the hesitations that I had with that new GPT technology coming out. Um, yeah, it's great for people who might not be very well versed in writing, but knowing the basics and being able to critically think about things, I think helps when you're trying to troubleshoot more advanced problems that use some of these advanced technologies. But that's just my opinion. So that's open up
Sure.
for discussion. But I feel like in order for us to really get the next generation excited, we have to connect them to the older generation so that they can hear the stories of why manufacturing is important to them, and then also get them to work with the older generations so that we're transferring those skills onto them and not losing sight of the importance of them.
So I know it's really important to you to attract younger folks or people who maybe aren't as interested in manufacturing, or don't know about it, or women, or people that are underrepresented in manufacturing. Have you found any sort of phrases or stories or examples that you tell that light up that light bulb, and get them to understand really quickly? Like what is your strategy in talking to someone that you know would fit really well, but just doesn't know enough about what manufacturing is or has a misconception about it? What have been the biggest success stories there for you?
So A lot of my following on LinkedIn, I've had a few people reach out to me and ask me, we have this problem in our community and I don't know what to do about it. And my response or my advice to them is you have to be proactive yourself. You can't just sit around and wait for someone else to make a change. Like if you really want a change to happen, then you need to be part of it and take the lead on it. And I know that can be scary for a lot of individuals, because I'm naturally an introvert. I don't like being in spaces with a lot of people, and people think that I'm crazy when I say that, because they're like, well, you talk so well to people and you seem really comfortable. And that wasn't always the case. Like I still have issues with social anxiety when I'm out in public with people, but the message that I'm trying to get out there is so important to me. And I just kept seeing people talk about the issues and not really do anything. So I've been looking at LinkedIn and connecting with people that I think are really preaching a great message. So one individual in particular is Andrew Crow. He's amazing. And I knew that there was an issue within my community. So what I decided to do was host this virtual event 2 years ago. And initially what I wanted to do was take the students within that community and bring them to all of the local manufacturers so that they could see what these manufacturers were producing and actually have conversations with them. Well, because of the pandemic, a lot of the companies didn't want to open up their doors to the students because they didn't want to be liable for anyone getting sick, which is completely understandable. But I didn't want to just stop there. Like I still felt like there was an interest, because before even trying to plan this event, I actually went to the school myself and had a conversation with the students. And I asked them, I said, if I can get this set up for you, would you want to go inside these manufacturers and see how they're producing these products that you're using yourselves? And they're like, oh my gosh, that would be so cool. Yes. So I feel like we're assuming a lot of things from the next generation instead of actually going in front of them and talking to them and having conversations with them. So I'm always encouraging people, especially manufacturers, get in front of these students. Talk to the teachers, talk to the school administrators, ask if you can do like a guest lecture or even Zoom in and do a presentation. Ask if you can, develop a field trip day and have them come in, get involved with Manufacturing Month and Manufacturing Day, because there's a lot of people talking about things, but they're not really doing anything. So that's the number one advice that I'm getting. If you think there's a need somewhere, don't wait for someone else to fill that need. Be the person to ask the questions and find the information and put your boots to the ground and actually lead the movement if you can. If there is a leader that you see, connect with them, reach out to them, ask them, hey, how can I help? What can I do? What do you need from me? Just continue to have these conversations and step outside your comfort zone. There's a gentleman in Minnesota, Devin Russell, and he was one of the individuals that reached out to me, and he is like, I see these gaps within my community. Like, how do I make these changes? Who do I go to? And I'm like, you need to talk to all of the leadership within your community. So he actually spoke to the company that he works for and asked if he could dedicate some of his days during the work week to visit the local high school and help the VOTEC teacher teach some of the students about CNC machinists, because that's what he does. He's a CNC machinist. So now what he's doing is he's trying to create this volunteer program where it's not just their company involved, but other manufacturers involved, because some days he gets so busy because he's involved with sales too that they can't really completely ignore their customers, because that's how they make money. So he's trying to get other manufacturers involved so that they can bring people in from different companies to come in and talk to the students, see what they're learning in the classroom setting, and offer their expertise with the teacher, because the program years back used to have 20 teachers involved, and now I think they only have like 3 or 5. So they cut back a lot on the teachers, and that has everything to do with budget issues. It has everything to do with policies, administration. So it's really a collective that we have to start thinking about in terms of how we're going to get these kids exposed and aware of the opportunities in manufacturing. It's going to literally take a village to do that, because it involves not just the community members, not just the teachers, not just the students, it's the government officials, it's all of the community leaders who aren't even involved in manufacturing. So like your banks, your grocery stores, it's everyone. We have to bring everyone together and educate them on why manufacturing is important and the opportunities that are available, because it's not this dirty, dark, dangerous place anymore. There's a lot more to it, and there's a lot more opportunities involved, and you don't have to be a math or science genius either. So my biggest advice is, if you feel like there's a problem, follow through with it and find out where the root of that problem is. That should be natural for engineers and manufacturers, because we always try to figure out the root of a problem to find a solution for it, and then have these conversations and get involved with anyone who's involved with manufacturing. So each state has a manufacturing extension partnership group, or at least they should. So see what sort of organizations are out there trying to do events and bring them all together and get everybody talking, because that's the only way we're going to be able to take on this huge feat, because it's huge. It's not just local, it's global.
Yeah, I see this like wall, like the factory wall. Within it, there's this really strong culture. There's identity. What you're able to do on the shop floor, what machines you're able to operate, what we can turn out of a work center. But then once you get outside of the walls of the factory, that culture just doesn't exist. No one knows about it. No one talks about it. It's almost as if it's just completely invisible. It's almost as if we need to
Yeah.
like export that strong culture out. And with the younger
Mhm.
generations, more and more of them are craving identity. They're craving fulfillment in doing something that's important. And we have this huge industry that's super important to the entire world. It's really fulfilling to build the things that power the wind turbines that will make renewable energy more accessible. And yet we haven't successfully exported this amazing identity outside of the factory wall somehow. So I
Mhm.
think that's a really good insight.
Well, a long time ago too, we used to highlight manufacturing. Like it was something that we were really proud in. So like my branding is from World War II, like the Rosie the
Hmm.
Riveters. The reason why I picked this branding and the reason why I wanted to bring that history back is because during that time, manufacturing was so important for us to get ahead in the war, win the war. And because all of our guys were going and fighting the war, the women needed to help produce what we needed. We needed ammunition, we needed planes, we needed boats, but we also needed everyday regular things like canned food and clothes and tools. And women really stepped up and took pride in what they were making. They knew it was part of a bigger picture that involved all of us as part of the United States. And that's what we need to do now. We need to bring that sense of pride. And I'm seeing some of the comments, and Justin Porter said the same thing. We promoted it really hard for a long time, but then somewhere along the line, we switched our thought process, where you had to go to a 4-degree school doing something else outside of manufacturing to be considered successful. And I think we need to understand that not everybody wants to go to a 4-year college. It's not for everyone. Um, and going to a tech school doesn't mean you're like the dumbed down version of something else. Like going to a tech school, you really learn a lot of these soft skills and basic skills that can help you along the way problem solve other situations that you might not think you have experience in. There's a woman that I am connected to. Her name is Antigone Sherris, and she's um, part of Triton College. And she said that we need to start letting people know that you can combine both. Like you can start out in a community college, you can be an apprentice, you can learn all of these basic skills. And if you want to move on to college later on, there's a way that you can also get that education as well too, because that can even be important too. We still need leadership. We still need people that do go to college and get bachelor degrees and master degrees. Like it's all connected. So we have to stop like promoting it in a way where one is better than the other, or you're not going to get the same opportunities or be able to go up the ladder in a similar way if you pick one over the other. I think there's a benefit to having both, and there's a benefit of explaining the opportunities better in both.
Yeah, I think there's this like unique moment where we're automating a lot of lower level tasks away, And I think
Hmm.
I think it causes fear when it should cause excitement. As we automate those tasks away, the remaining tasks become more sophisticated, more brainy, more intellectual,
Hmm.
and just as, mentally fulfilling as some things that you might have to go to school for 6 or 8 years for. There's a statistic that we compiled. We've lost 5 million manufacturing jobs over the last 30 some years, but the GDP of manufacturing in America has gone up. And right now in the world, across every country, we're the highest GDP per manufacturing worker. We went from 70 some thousand to 190,000, which means that for America, every employee
Cool.
we add in is worth $200,000 of GDP, whereas it's only worth 40,000 in China, and they've added 50 million people. So in terms of turning people's time into productive value, there's nobody better at it than us. And there's a huge incentive for us to get more people into the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think again, it's just, us going out of our way and having conversations, not with just all the adults. Like we have to have conversations with kids too. And I think that's a little intimidating to some people, especially if you're not a parent. Um, but that's just me speaking personally. The kids are curious, they're naturally curious, and they need that encouragement sometimes. Not everybody is going to be a born leader, so some kids need that encouragement. They need someone to believe in them, and they need someone to show interest in them, because if they don't see that, then they're going to go somewhere else where they're getting that sort of attention. And I see that with my daughter every single day. Like, she and her friends, the number of likes and follows is their sense of validation. So when they're on all of these social media channels and they're getting likes and comments and, thumbs ups and all that stuff for their photos, they feel a sense of pride in that and a sense of accomplishment. So how can we take that and transition it over for them to feel that same sense of pride and accomplishment doing something in engineering and manufacturing? And that's why I'm having these conversations with kids and getting outside of my comfort zone, because I feel like what they have to say is important. Last year, yep, we're in 2023. 2022, I went to IMTS, and it was really important for me to get the kids in my community to that show because they're only learning certain things. They only have the budget for certain technology and certain curriculum. So I wanted them to see that there's so much more that they're not seeing outside of their classroom. So I was able to get a bus sponsored for them. Thank you, Fran. I love you. She's amazing because she helped me get that bus out there. And the kids were just blown away. They didn't know that we had 3D printing that was building these lunar modules for the moon. They didn't know that, companies are actually building homes out of large 3D concrete printers. They didn't know that there was CNC machines that could do certain products and make them look very clean and finished and crisp without secondary processing. They didn't know any of that stuff. So they were really grateful that they had that opportunity. So we got to keep moving with that momentum. We have to consider ways, okay, how can I help my community? That's like a small step. How can I help my community so that these kids can start learning about these opportunities? And at that show, I met an 11-year-old girl. Her name is Sailor. And we were talking, and she's like, well, you're a girl. She's a girl, pointing to the woman that introduced me to her. Her name's Barb Schmitz. She's a girl. I'm a girl, but that's it. Everybody else around us is a guy. And I'm like, well, that's why we need you to come in to the sector so we can start beating out the guys. Like, we need you to come in. And it's amazing because now she's speaking at an event. She's speaking at
Wow,
a manufacturing engineering event with her dad. She's 11 years old. She knows how to CNC machine, and she started her own business. So
that's
if
awesome.
I didn't talk to her, and if I didn't get her hyped up, she might have not had the courage to go do that. So that's what I want everybody here listening in to do. Like, connect with someone that you think might not be speaking out because they might be too shy, they might be intimidated, they might not just know what's going on. Like, kind of think outside the box and be proactive and connect with someone because you might be that one influence they need to come into the sector and make a huge change.
Yeah, I think it goes back to something you said earlier. There's a lot of people talking about the problem, but not many people doing something about it. And I think that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons, I think, is that manufacturing is really mechanically minded. People don't brag. They're not super ostentatious. You don't see them on TikTok, filming themselves in a Lamborghini or whatever it may be. But I think the lesson is that you have to cut through the noise. You have to put it out there, because otherwise you'll get drowned out, like you said. Like, there's something that is
Yeah.
like spiritually existential about manufacturing, where you need to get over that shame or that embarrassment or that fear, and just go talk about it, because no one else is going to be able to do it credibly like the people that work inside it.
Yeah. And I mean, if you can't do it, companies have marketing departments. So I worked with one company, and his name was, I think his name was Steve. It was a really long time ago, but he was one of my favorite people because he did not like me at first when I came into this company. He wanted nothing to do with me because he knew when I was walking through his door, I needed information from him, and he wanted to focus on his job, what he needed to do for the company, and that was it. He didn't want to talk to me. And one day I came through his door and he was like, the dirty penny's here again. And I'm like, what does that mean? And apparently, a dirty penny, it was like some old school comment back in the day that meant someone that came at the most inconvenient times and just caused a wrench basically in your time period. And I just started laughing, and I was like, well, I must be someone you like now because you gave me a nickname, so I'll just go with that. So I feel like people who are in this sector, they want to talk about what they're doing, but again, they might be shy, or they might not know how to talk about it, or they might not like talking to strangers about it. So, okay, that's fine. So, who do they trust within your company? If you have someone they trust, how can they get the story from them and be able to share it for you? So I think making those connections is important too, and just thinking of creative ways on how to get that knowledge, because a lot of the engineers I've talked to, they were some of the hardest nuts to crack, and it's not because they didn't want to share the information. They were just introverts and really shy, and they're so used to being behind the scenes that when someone does ask them a question, they're just like, well, I don't know what to say here. And sometimes it gets really technical too. So I feel like when I was trying to get uh, some information for some of the articles I was writing for some of the companies I worked for, I felt like when I was asking so many questions, they were just like, how do you not know this? Like, this is so common sense to me. Like, how is it not common sense to you? So it was kind of like getting over that barrier. And when they knew that they were teaching me and I was actually really interested in what they had to say, they got more excited and they were able to open up a little easier. So I just feel like getting over that initial like uncomfortable barrier, you just got to get over that, and then you can get some of these guys to really open up, because there's a passion there. And I say this to everybody, the reason why I love this sector, and so many people have said this too, like most of the women that I've talked to, some who have fallen in this sector by accident and came from completely different industries, the reason why they don't leave, or if they did leave and they came back, is because the people in the sector are amazing, and they're the salt of the earth, and they're just, they really care about getting things done and providing solutions that help make people's lives easier. So I think if we can keep that common ground in mind when we're having these conversations, we'll have a lot more success getting the next generation excited and bringing them in. Because they do. The next generation is so connected. They care about what's going on in the world. They want everybody to get along. If you look at some of the things that are happening globally, the next generation is not happy about it. They want people to
Yeah.
get along. They want us to be sustainable. They want us to do better. They do. And if we don't, they're going to call us out on our BS and they're going to go somewhere else.
um on the other side of the coin, like inside the manufacturing companies, in the past, a lot of the new generation of employees were the children or the nephews or nieces or the grandchildren of the people that were working in those exact same shops, and that trend is starting to die. It's gone down a dramatic amount. Have you seen anything to help fix that, to to revive that tradition of passing along, specific knowledge and trade value to your children and to your children's children or to their friends. Have you seen success stories there where people have been able to turn that trend back?
I'm starting to see it in small amounts. A lot of the women that I've talked to who didn't fall into manufacturing or engineering by accident, the reason why they got involved with it is because they had a family member who was an engineer or worked in a manufacturing shop, and they were part of that, and they just fell in love with it when they were kids, that they wanted to see what they could do. When I was in high school, a lot of my friends, that was what they were going to do when they graduated high school. They knew where they were going to work. They knew that they were going to have a solid career. So they weren't thinking about going off to college. They knew because their mom or their dad or their grandfather or grandmother, their aunts and their uncles, they knew that's where they were going to be. And then the late 1990s, early 2000s, it took a crash, and the community I grew up in was really affected. Like, two companies completely shut down. It left such a bad taste in the community's mouth that parents were scared to encourage their kids to go into engineering and manufacturing. So I feel like that's why it's important for us who are in the sector now to really be proactive and actually educate our communities, because I still think there's that fear that it's not a stable place for a career. So if we can show them that, yes, that did happen, but we're so resilient and we're bouncing back, and there's so many different opportunities that we can pursue and grow in, like your kid can be very successful. I think then we're going to start seeing more families be a part of different companies. And I'm seeing people refer their friends and families to positions now. Like, we still have a bunch of CNC machining and welding opportunities where I'm from. And, the people that are working in the companies, they're talking to their brothers, they're talking to their dads and their moms, and they're saying, hey, it's never too late to change your career path if you want to. This position's open. They're offering training. There's a course here at this tech school that they'll invest in for you to train. If you want to come and work here, you can start as an apprentice. My own brother, he didn't like his job, and he went a couple years back and got his welding certification. Now he's a welder, and now he's thinking about starting his own fabrication business. So I'm starting to see it come back, but it needs help. And we're the people to help build that bond again.
Yeah, and I think one thing I want to mention is that the environment in these shops is overwhelmingly welcoming and open. People want to pass their knowledge down. They want people to work with that are excited and new and learning. There is a wonderment and an enjoyment in teaching somebody something that and having them figure it out. So I think for anyone that is afraid of approaching people, people will open their doors all the time. When I was when I was a kid doing a science project, I just walked into a shop and had someone weld something for me, and they just did it and asked me for money. That there was never even a second question. That's been the culture in manufacturing for a long time, and I still think it is. So
yeah, I've worked in a couple shipping departments, and I would have to walk around the shop floor to get part numbers and figure out if something was missing, where it was at. And I was able to meet some pretty interesting people from around the world. Even, like, there's a lot of people that came from different countries here to America to better their lives, and they've been working in some of these manufacturing companies for 30 plus years, and the history that they have is just amazing. One company that I worked for was actually started by a German, and his history was just fascinating. And I had the blessing of taking his writing and actually putting it in blog form. And he always wrote in German first, so he had his daughter translate it from German to English, and then I would have to go through, and then I would need to set up interviews with him and go through the blog post with him and ask him questions to get more information. And he just had a fascinating history, and he was such a hard worker, and he came here because he wanted to better his life. And his company now is like one of the biggest companies in CNC machining, and they're doing fantastic things, and they're so family oriented, and they're just so they're very proud of what they do and what they create and how they're changing things here in the United States. And I think if kids can start listening to those stories and hearing it, that's going to get them excited, and they're going to want to be part of it because it's actually doing something good for our world. And there's bad and good things for everything, right? So yeah, there is the bad side of manufacturing, but overall, we make products to better our lives. So if we focus on that and can share some of the stories that we're doing in like food sustainability or energy conservation, kids are really going to start to gravitate towards this sector. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because when I was at IMTS, I interviewed some of the students that came from my community, and each and every one of them was interested in green energy or energy sustainability or just sustainability as a whole. And I was like, why are you so interested in this stuff? And they're like, well, because there's so many people here and we just see a lot of waste. So how can we reduce that? And I'm like, holy crap, that's amazing. I was just completely blown away.
Yeah. I think the only other thing that pops into my mind that's important that I want to mention is that I think we do a lot to talk about the factory of the future as being automated with robots and all this cool technology, and it is, and it's exciting, and we should keep talking about it. But I think we should also reinforce that the factory of the future is still human. It's still deeply human in how we work with those machines and how we design things and how we figure out how to build things. And I think potentially by over marketing and over talking about robots and automation, we maybe give people the feeling that they're going to be left out in the future, and that's really not going to be the case. So
yeah, that's what's happening now. And not everything necessarily has to be automated. There's a gentleman that I follow on LinkedIn, and he creates a different perspective from completely automating everything. And I feel like we need to keep that in mind, that just because it can be automated doesn't necessarily mean it has to be. But even if we do get to that point of complete automation, we still need people to maintain, program, connect, install. Like we still have room for human interactivity, like with the advanced technologies. And the other thing is too, yes, some things are being completely automated and people are getting laid off or losing their jobs, but it's also opening up new career opportunities that didn't exist 10 or 15 years ago. And that's where I'm like really highlighting, that's why we need to come in as a sector into these communities and educate them, because not every teacher that's in a VOTEC program, not every student counselor, not every school leader is going to know about these changes that are happening in the sector if someone's not telling them about them. So we actually need to go in and say, okay, here's the new opportunities, here's what the curriculum might look like or should look like, and here's some of the resources that we can provide to help you to start integrating this into your school, or how you can bring your kids to it. Like, we really need to start having those conversations, because a good point that someone brought up, so you have your course list and descriptions. Not everybody knows what CNC means. So if a student looks at that and they don't know what it means, why are they going to sign up for that course? So we got to think about how we're writing about these opportunities to grab the kids' attention so that they're actually signing up for those classes. Because if you don't get enough students to fill the seats, you're going to lose the class, which means you're going to lose the budget, and then it's harder to get the budget back once you lose it.
Cool. Well, this has been super insightful, Meaghan. We have a couple questions in the chat that I just want to get to before we have to get off here. So somebody was asking, you were talking about, talking to kids and trying to get them into manufacturing. Like, how young do you start? Like elementary school kids? Like, what age do you think we should start talking about this?
So I have two boys. They're 3 and 5. And my 3-year-old specifically is really interested in anything that spins. So he'll take cars and he'll watch them move. He took plastic cars and started throwing them because he wanted to break them apart so he could see the inside of them and then try to put it back together. So I feel like it's never too soon. Like, if they're walking and talking and interacting with things, I feel like that's a good time to at least make them aware of the opportunities. Of course, they're not going to understand what CNC machining is or whatever. There was an article, and I have to find it so I can give you guys the link, but I believe it was out of Ohio. They incorporated CNC machining in their kindergarten program through colors. So they were teaching kids about CNC machining with colors. I don't know if it was the buttons or whatever, but they introduced it to kindergartners, and they were planning on, you know, keeping that conversation going as they went through middle school all the way up to high school. So that's just thinking out of the box, and I think that's really cool. So I think we need to ask ourselves, what can we do to start introducing these opportunities where kids, yeah, they might not necessarily understand it, but they're seeing it and they're interacting with it, and it follows them throughout their school career.
Yeah, that's super cool. I would love that link. You should send that over to us when you find it. But one additional question was just, you mentioned Andrew Crow and some different groups to build awareness for students and new talents. Are there like any other places that you would recommend manufacturers, leaders should go to connect with potential hires?
Yeah, so every state, I believe, should have what is called an MEP. It's a manufacturing extension partnership or program. So if you Google that, it should come up with the website, and it should show every MEP in every state that's available. Another organization that I'm a part of is Women in Manufacturing. I'm not seeing them necessarily connect with kids so much, but they help women who are already in the sector develop leadership skills and just bring awareness on how we can support the women who are in the sector now, which is fantastic. They also have a virtual event coming up called Moms in Manufacturing, or Manufacturing Moms. And I just think that's really cool because there are a lot of moms within the sector. There are other groups like the SME, the Society of, or is it there's so many acronyms, I get them mixed up. The SME is like the Society of Something Engineering, but they also have a women chapter. There's like the PMPA, the NTMA, the TMA, like there's so many different organizations out there. And then when you break it down with each state and each community, they might have their separate organizations as well too. So I can send a couple links that I follow to you guys that you can use in a follow-up conversation. But the big one that I'm in is WIM, and it's been a fantastic opportunity because they actually have chapters too in each state, and they do events in each state as well too, so you can connect with other people within your community through that organization.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I love all those links. We can pass them on to people too after this.
Society of Manufacturing Engineers. Thank you, Karen. Sorry, I'm reading comments on there.
You're good. That's helpful. Yeah, thank you. I want to give you a chance to plug yourself one more time. Like, where can people find you if they want to look you up? Let us know where we can get a hold of you.
Yeah, you can go to mavensofmanufacturing.com. And then I'm also on LinkedIn, which is probably the quickest way to get me. That has my email and everything on there. But if you actually want to schedule like 30 minutes with me, go to mavensofmanufacturing.com and scroll to the bottom of the first page, and there's actually a scheduling link there. I'm looking for more guests to come on Mavens, specifically women, just because that's my niche. But if you're a gentleman in manufacturing too, and you have a cool idea of how to get more women excited or the next generation excited, I'm interested in having a conversation with you too, because I mean, we need all the help that we can get. And I'm not trying to like boot men out of the sector. I'm just trying to get more women excited. And there's a lot of great male mentors out there. I wouldn't be where I'm at today without them. So thank you to all the guys. So if you have an idea, let's chat about it, because I'm all about bringing awareness and bringing communities together and really starting to close that skills gap.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Meaghan. Thanks, Sunny. If you guys have questions, you can always message any of us. Find us at fulcrumpro.com, and we can answer your questions there as well, and reach out to Meaghan.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Meaghan.
It's lunchtime.
Apparently my Alexa thinks it's lunchtime. That's glad that I waited until after I ended the live stream.
That was awesome. Thank you.